Some thank yous really quick. First off, the two people who really drive this thing home, Mr. Russ Anderson and Mrs. Gina Ank right here. If you see them at all this week, say hi, give them a high five. Take a look down the aisle, give a thumbs up to your teacher. They don't have to bring you here. Say hi, say thanks, give them a high five. Hey, fifth hour. This is my class right there, they're great. Right back at you. Make sure you thank your parents who are potentially boosters who helped guide this as well. Thanks to the tech crew upstairs. You wouldn't be able to hear me right now. The lights would be off, something would be going wrong. And then finally, thank yourselves. Turn to the person next to you and thank them for being awesome. Yes. Okay. Well, we have an awesome period full of students, and I don't want to delay it anymore. So please, give your undivided attention and help me welcome Jessica Arms first. Go ahead.
Hello. I'm going to be reading a poem that I wrote, and shout out to Mr. Dawson's 5th period class. You are falling, plummeting off the steep mountain you so eagerly climbed. You feel light, floating through the thin air, slowly distancing from the world as you go, letting your mind meander through your twisted thoughts. Worries and fears have no place here. The sky is where you feel safest, because as you plunge downwards, nothing can touch you and no one can hurt you. Sinking into the soft pink clouds, allowing them to consume you, pouring in through your many untouched wounds, filling your hopeless body up with warm notions. Feels like home. The home you never had. The type of house you dreamt about as a kid. The ones you see in those cheesy TV shows, with endless laughter and miles of love. But then you come to a violent crash, your fantasy crumbling as you hit the cold earth, awakening back to reality's cruel schemes. Alone and freezing, you lay there. Looking at the gray, motionless sky, pausing for a mere second, thinking about your beautiful fall. Looking at the treacherous mountain stretched out before you. Taking it all in for a brief moment. Once more, you begin your treasured journey, starting from scratch at the mountain's base, placing your left foot on the rugged gray rock. Just as you did the night before, you start to climb. Struggling to find stable holds in the melting rock, slipping occasionally but never losing your grip. Veering at the mountain's distant peak, you anxiously push further, making it to the deserted mountaintop, but barely. Standing over the taunting edge, looking down at the intimidating world, insignificant waves of wind pass you by. Your body relaxes and you take a deep breath. Exhaling into one last gust, you lean into it and start your fall again. Next up is Caitlin Spicer.
Alright, I'm going to be reading a paper I wrote. Shout out to Kat's 5th hour class. Alright, in one's life. If you really knew me, you would know my life is filled with grief, cancer, and death. 5 years ago, 6th grade, 12 years old, I lost my dad to cancer. My dog passed away, and my house got foreclosed, and I moved schools. 4 years ago, 7th grade, and 13 years old, my mom got cancer. I moved again and went to another school. 1 year ago, 10th grade, and 15 years old, my mom got remarried to who I call my stepdad today. My uncle and my aunt passed away. I moved again and went to another school. 5.5 months ago, 11th grade, and 16 years old, my brother left for college, leaving me all alone. In my life, I was shown death and heartache in an early age, but it has made me who I am today. I won't get the experience of having my dad walk me down the aisle. I won't get the experience of passing the house I grew up in down to my children. I won't get the experience of what it is like for my future children to meet their grandpa. But what I will experience is going through every day, trying to find a place in my heart for my mom's significant other. I will experience waking up every morning wondering when the nightmares of seeing my dad dead in a casket will go away. I will experience what it is like knowing kids from 7 different schools and being in 5 different homes. I will experience relationships with people that will come and go. I will experience every day wondering when I'm going to get cancer, like my parents. My relationship with grief is an everyday journey. I grieve the loss of my dad. I grieve the loss of the house I grew up in for 12 years. I grieve the relationships I cannot get back. I grieve the life I thought was so perfect when I have a mom, a dad, a brother, and a perfect house. What cancer did to my life was cripple love, shatter hope, destroy peace, and suppress memories. But love helped me see a little speck of light through all the darkness that surrounded me. I can't go back and change the beginning, but I can only create the end. You either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness. Everyone has a story to tell, a lesson to teach, and wisdom to share. Open up and share your story. Become an inspiration to others. You were created with a purpose. Go out there and make a difference by being the difference. Owning your story and loving yourself through the process is the bravest thing you will ever do. Thank you. Next up, Jason Johnson.
Alright, this is a piece about my family. I call it the Dung family. And I'd like to give a quick shout out to Dawson's Fifth Hour. Out of all the philanthropists, Samaritans, and Jeff Bezos in the world, the Jung family happens to have none of them. In fact, I consider my family to be the most condensed group of donkeys on this planet. I'd be willing to bet good cash that the members of my family are the most conceited and annoying people you could possibly meet. No matter how sweet, charming, and good-looking we may seem, it's all a ploy to get people to believe that we're a normal family. Just like how people are willing to spend money at Chick-fil-A over PDQ, the Jung family go to extreme measures to look good. Therefore, if you ever have the misfortune of meeting any one part of this herd of lunatics, Godspeed. However, in the case of such a tragedy, I've listed essential information you need to know about each family member. The snack hoarder. We all have one in the family. They love sharing and will collect snacks with a passion so strong it matches the strength of a Thanos snap. Seriously, if I ate all those snacks, I wouldn't feel so good. Maybe the snack hoarder is you and your family, but for my family, it's my dad, Jay Jung. My dad will go the extra mile to eat all the Oreos in the package, except for the last 2 hiding in the corner, only to reseal the box so it gives the illusion of looking full. In addition, he's so narcissistic that when I once asked him why he named me Jason in the 1st grade, he responded with, "Oh, it's because you're Jay's son." Yeah, it's really funny knowing that your dad chose your name so you could crack a dumb dad joke to with his friends. I usually forget my dad's age since he has the maturity of a 6-year-old. My man-child father is currently 50-something years old and plays tennis every Friday like he's 20, and it's only time before reality comes and slaps him across the cheek. In an era dominated by technology, we're constantly surrounded by screens, iPads, and phones. Everyone's digitally connected in some way, and technology has become a part of our daily lives. So it's expected for people to have knowledge on how to perform basic tasks on a computer. But for my mom, Jung, it's harder than that physics test you bombed the other day. I'm always victim to teaching her how to take a proper picture on her smartphone or how to make a new file on her computer. It's not that hard, but to her it's like rocket science. My mother's the type of person to click on internet articles titled 10 questions science still can't answer, and later proceed to nag me and my sister on basic facts we already know. Her nagging's like whenever your friend will say a joke and no one laughs, I've been there, but they keep on repeating the same unfunny garbage joke, somehow thinking it'll get funnier. Like, dude, you're just embarrassing yourself. And lastly, my sister, Veronica Sujin Jung, is the nerdiest and overall most annoying person I know. She's constantly nosing in my business and stalking my Instagram comments. And whenever she's home from college, it feels like there's a 3rd adult in the house. I'm sure you've heard the term helicopter parents. My sister will make helicopter parents look like dollar store Hot Wheels. To make matters worse, she uses her connections at Friend to dig up dirt about me, and I can never get away with anything. Not to mention, she has this mad addiction to hot Cheetos. I mean, they're great and all, but it's kind of gross and excessive. Whenever she snacks on them, her face turns bright red, and I always joke about how she looks like a baboon's butt. And if you don't know what that looks like, I suggest you don't look it up, not because you'll see a baboon's butt, but rather picture my sister. She's so damn good at deceiving others that people actually like to spend time with her. It's weird. Sujin's the type of person who'll speak louder with her body than with her words. No, I'm not calling her fat, but as her brother, I can usually sense her menacing demeanor long before she starts yelling at me. And it gets on my nerves too. To put things in perspective, imagine the most annoying thing in your life. Like the fact that Jewel Oscar will sell packages of 8 hot dogs and 10 buns. That's the type of feeling I'll get whenever my sister acts this way. And I acknowledge that it's really immature, but it really does suck. And in all seriousness, no matter how weird my family may seem, they're still my family, and I shamelessly admit that I'm proud to be a product of such a mess. Hopefully after hearing this, you learn to pick out the things about your family that piss you off and realize it's really nothing to get mad about. Although my family does things that make me crazy, at the end of the day, they're just trivial matters, and I know they mean the best. My dad has the most badass background, and I'm proud to say that I'm Jay's son. He came to American high school knowing no English, and on top of that, he commuted 2 hours every day to school just to have a good education. I wondered how much harder my life would have been if he didn't prioritize his education and work so hard. In the same way, my mom works her tail off for the family too. She works 12-hour shifts 4 to 5 times a week and still has the time to cook and care for us. She tries so hard to make me happy, and I still understand why she has the patience to deal with my complaining. And lastly, I'm always glad I can talk to my sister about my problems. When you have parents who are incapable of understanding you due to the cultural and language barriers that exist, I'm very grateful to have a sister to fill that void. She's my rock, and I sometimes wonder how much bigger of a piece of crap I'd be without her. So if you ever chance upon meeting me or my family, it'd be smart to stay away. Although my family's full of freaks, I'm proud to be a member, and maybe someday in the future I'll be as accomplished as they are. Thank you. Up next is Maitu.
Hi, my name is Maithu, and shout out to Mr. Anderson's 5th period English class. And I'll be presenting a piece called Comfort and Culture. As the Festival of Lights drew near and the harvest season ended in 2016, the family altar was lit with candles and incense. It was a yearly puja, a prayer ritual my mother would hold to celebrate the gods. My mother was adorned in a peacock blue sari, while I wore an old t-shirt, fidgeting in the corner of the room with my father. My mother turned towards me and gestured for me to join her in singing prayers. I instead turned away to walk into my room, as I had no interest in the activities and festivities. As I left, I met my mother's eyes, shining with disappointment. Seeing the hurt in her eye, I resolved to come to terms with my complicated relationship with my culture. Understanding my origins and my parents' worldview has always caused me great uncertainty. My mother and father are polar opposites in their ideology. My mother loves her culture, the music, the colorful saris, the spices, and the large family structures that make up our communities. She would drag me to Carnatic music lessons and put me in gatherings of family and friends in a vibrant Indian community. My father has never felt engaged by it, and felt as though its grandiosity masked its darker aspects, the classism, the sexism, and the blind idolatry of the figures of our history. On long car rides together, he would lecture me on philosophy and inequality, on science and the double standards of society. Between the adoration of her culture by my mother and the nihilism of my father, I felt confused by it. Was my culture supposed to be celebrated, or was I supposed to pretend it didn't exist and be normal like the other kids at school? As a child, I masked aspects of myself that could be associated with my culture, whether it was the music I listened to or the food I brought to school for lunch. I would try to speak in the most American accent I could manage, and I rarely celebrated the holidays my mother would painstakingly prepare the house for. It was easier to hide the parts of my culture that were taunted at school, even when I was unsure of their validity. I instead poured all my time into studying and found new sports and hobbies like swimming and sketching. I took the time to educate myself on various cultures, religions, and their individual histories. I wanted to be worldly, rather than bogged down by the expectation my culture had for me, to be an active participant in it. However, as I've grown older, I've discovered that my culture and my interests are not mutually exclusive. For all the influence my parents had upon my early upbringing, they have given me the chance to explore myself as a person and haven't forced me to partake in any activities that didn't suit my interests. Through being given the time to explore myself and my roots, I have found that they are vibrant and surrounded by an incredible history and hold a soul of their own. They inspire compassion that binds families and generations together through music, language, culture, and religion. My identity has not been so much shaped by my culture as it has come to terms with it. I have discovered that my view of it doesn't have to fit a particular narrative, and neither do I. I can enjoy my music, have my own fashion sense, ambitions, and understand criticisms towards my culture without excluding myself from or inserting myself into it. I hope that as time goes on, I can see much more of its complexity and beauty. In the evenings of the pujas my mother holds these days, the house is once again filled with the scent of incense. Candles light the family altar, and my mother begins to sing, her eyes closed as she recites hymns. When she opens her eyes to smile at me and pats the floor next to her, I sit beside her. I start to sing with her, and out of the corner of my eye, I can see her smile expand a little as her voice joins mine again. It feels like I'm right where I belong. Thank you. Next up is Sarah.
Okay, so I have a couple shout outs. So shout out to Mr. Anderson's 5th period lit class and to Vikas for coming during his lunch period.
Yeah, Vikas!
Alright, so this first poem I wrote, it's called To Whoever Loves You Next. To whoever loves him next. He's a sucker for ice cream. I've never seen anyone eat a 50-cent cone so fast. Go outside. Walk around underneath the canopy of emerald leaves in the summertime. That's where his soul belongs, somewhere free. His mind is always moving, always rootless, even in his dreams. To whoever loves him next, you'll get frustrated at him sometimes, angry even, and you won't know why someone you love so goddamn bad seems so far away at times. Be patient with him. Learn the way he holds you a little closer when he's hurting, speak a little softer, listen. To whoever loves him next, he's a fighter, but there are only so many hits he can take. Show him all of the bruises, the hairline cracks in your soul, heal him, be his peace. He crosses the ocean of his mind to get to you every day. To whoever loves him next, please love him the way that I once loved him. Kiss him at stoplights, tell him his eyes remind you of whiskey when it catches the sunlight. Remind him that he is brilliant and beautiful and giving. Tell him that I'm sorry. Tell him I didn't know that 2 broken halves might make something beautiful, and that doesn't mean it's whole. And if you can't, please don't stay. He's everything I ever wanted. Let somebody else give him everything he's ever needed. Sincerely, I used to love him. And then my second one is like a little heavy, but it's called On God. So I whisper to my little brother that God isn't real, and when he tells her, I freeze. My sparkly Velcro's pointed towards the door, waiting for a fist, the sharp crack of dishes in the sink, the weeping silence that follows. I tell her I do believe in God. The trouble is that I don't think he believes in me. I went to therapy the other day, sat across from her on the squishy sofa, my Nikes pointed towards the door where she told me about victims, about abusers, about bystanders. She asked me how that made me feel about my father. I imagine that God is something of a bystander. Okay, that's it. Next up is Valeria Delgado.
First, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Dawson's 5th period class. The violence in Mexico had reached another home in Mexico City. When Irma arrived from work, she always got help from her fiancé, Jose, to enter the car through the gate of the house. But one day while driving the car through the gates, two armed guys got in and said that nothing would happen to the couple as long as they got the keys to the car. Irma, with the car keys, ran into the house and left Jose in the patio with the robbers. Jose stalled for time by telling the robbers that the keys were going to be given to them. 5 minutes passed and the robbers became paranoid and thought the police had been called. Jose remembers them saying, "Just kill him and run." He went pale. The robbers struck him on the side of the head with a gun and ran. The assault had marked Irma and Jose both intensely, and that is when the couple decided they were going to move out of the country as soon as they could. I am glad they made that choice because that is my parents' true story. I get to hear the details of my parents' successful immigration story every time there's a new dinner at the family, every time there's a new guest at the family dinner table. The details of how they arrived in Chicago of October of 1999, of how one of the first things they did was to complete paperwork in order to legally obtain work permits and social security numbers, of how they crashed at a house of a friend for a month and immediately got jobs, which led them to the purchase of a car. Of course, it wasn't all so pretty. My mom vividly remembers the first time they went out to eat a burger. The second they walked in, they could both feel the heavy looks they got from white people. When my parents would go out, employees would pretend not to know simple Spanish words so they didn't have to attend to my parents. When my dad started working, and as he struggled to learn English, he remembers being asked, "What are you doing here? This is America and we speak English. Go back to Mexico where they speak Spanish." Unfortunately, the ugly side of my parents' immigration story reflects what most Latinos experience. Now, if we fast forward to 2018, we see news images of kids in cages and videos of people getting harassed for speaking Spanish in public. I can sadly say that I'm not surprised. As a Latino, I hear deportation stories from friends and family members all the time. They're nothing new, but I'm still easily affected by these stories. Why wouldn't I be? Knowing it could be a friend's dad or someone special to me taken to a detention center. One day last May, my dad came back from work and he told me that there were ice raids at the restaurant chain where my uncle worked. I immediately started crying, but I had to hide my tears so it wouldn't seem weak. As a U.S. citizen with immigrant parents, I can't show weakness. These ICE/deportation stories I hear from family and friends have sparked a passion in me, which has led me to pursue a career in immigration law. Mainly because we are currently living in an era where society tends to notice injustice and is not afraid to stand up to the government, especially and demand change, especially when we have a want-to-be politician in office and a sexual abuser in the Supreme Court. I truly believe that this generation, our generation, is the one that will have the most impact on issues such as immigration, gender equality, and racism. Now, don't get me wrong. My parents and I love America, especially my mom. She says this country has given her vast opportunities to grasp the American dream. In that case, the U.S. is giving me the chance to stand here and voice my opinion on current issues, and gives you the chance to speak your opinion too. So if you disagree with me, let's just have a calm and beneficial conversation about our political views and opinions on the world. The only way we as a nation can progress for the benefit of all mankind is if we have discussions, and while discussing, being open-minded. So let's come together. I am willing to set aside any judgment towards people who disagree with me if it means we can start bettering the nation's immigration issues little by little. Up next is Sarah Stapleton.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Okay, I'd like to give a shout out to my tech crew fam and Mr. Anderson's 5th period English class. I don't really have a title for this, so let's just get into it. It may seem concerning to some that The Shining is an apt metaphor for my life. However, to me, Stephen King's horror classic is a sensitive and real experience that I can relate to. The true monster of the novel is not the Overlook nor Jack Torrance himself, but rather his alcoholism. At Jack's base, he is a man consumed by this mental disorder, doing everything in his power to heal his family from what this disease has subjected them to. They move away, and he makes a valiant effort to give his family the love and respect they deserve, But in the end, Jack tragically succumbs to the voices and urges in his head and effectively destroys his relationship with his family. In my own life, I've experienced a glimmer of hope that circumstances will change. Every time my father gave up drinking for a couple of weeks, I used to think maybe this time will be different. Yet, just like in The Shining, the hold of my father's illness was so great that the attempt would fail and he would spiral further away from my mother, my brother, and me. From childhood to now, I watched my dad transform someone whom I loved and I respected into someone who was emotionally abused and gaslighted me due to his addiction to alcohol. As I became older, every mistake I made was accompanied by a flurry of insults and swears, all of which I quickly internalized. Every mean thing someone did or said to me, I told myself I deserved it. It was my fault. I believe that I had a personality that was so terrible that not even my parents could love me, so why would my friends? Living in this situation, I had to choose whether to completely break down or adapt. High school for me was the turning point where I decided to leave everything I had kept inside behind and to truly just be myself. I chose to volunteer and devote my life to running and school as a coping mechanism for what was happening at home. Between practice, meets, weekly meetings with my crew, campouts, play rehearsals, and more, all the time in my house was spent eating, doing homework, and sleeping. Like Danny, I had found my very own Shining to help me survive this horror scenario my life had transformed into. Pretty soon, these coping mechanisms turned into the passions in my life. I lean on my teammates for support when it gets rough, while my fellow venturers teach me how to keep my eyes ahead and focus on making the world a better place. Knowing how much it hurts to be considered less than, I'm constantly volunteering for, mentoring, and helping others. All of this has helped me see how fulfilled I am when I leave behind all of my own problems and work to help solve someone else's. The dive I had taken to my learning also made me realize that nothing made me jump around with excitement like when I managed to simplify a complex logic expression or when I finally finished sewing my prom dress. My dad had his worst crash February of last year. I don't think you can be the same after seeing someone hit rock bottom, their lowest of lows. However, it's through this experience that my dad finally decided to get help. It hasn't been easy. It still isn't. But so far, my dad has managed to be sober for almost an entire year. I don't know if the relationship between us can ever repair, but it's good to know that it's never too late to try. Horror as a medium gives readers a way to discuss the human experience in an exaggerated but honest light. Even though parental support is considered essential in a child's development, there are thousands of kids like Danny and me who manage to be thrown off that deep end and kick their way to survival. The Shining is one of the first pieces of fiction I read that didn't shy away from the effect of alcoholism on family structure, and instead it helped me realize that I was not alone. It's been a long road, but because of my dad, I know what person I want to be and what life I want to live. Thank you. Next up is Isabel Buenavista.
Shout out to Burdick's 5th period. When I was little, I was a talker. So when my parents took me on vacation, I would be inevitably talking to anyone around me that was willing to listen. And they would look at this 2-foot-tall Asian girl, striking up a conversation about anything she could think of, and they would ask, "So where are you from?" And I would say, "Oh, I'm from Chicago." And they would give me this look, like I was joking, because what they really meant was, "Which country are you from?" But that just didn't occur to me, because I knew I was born here. I was American. The color of my skin didn't mean anything to me at the time, because it hadn't been ingrained into my head that anything really separated me from the other kids other than gender. So when they asked again, "No, where are you from?" I shrugged and said, "I'm from Chicago. I was American." What really makes you American? The answer varies depending on who you ask. Some people believe that what makes you American is determined by the color of your skin, or your parents, or the accent that mixes up your vowels and drops your articles. In reality, it's the miles that you or your ancestors have traveled to get here. It's the dirt on their hands and the blisters on their feet. It's the hard work that it took to get on that train or that boat or to walk across long stretches of land to get to this nation of dreams. It's the blood on their hands, your hands. It's where are your papers? It's the sideways eyeing and the quiet whispering behind hands to ears, like the soft rustling of wind through trees. It's the screaming and the crying and the separation of families and the death and the tragedy and the parents left behind. And the scorn of those who scream at your retreating back, you don't have the right to come back. In the end, it's the aggregation of all of us. It's the juniors holding hands in the hallways, brown intertwined with white. It's the child with black hair, a round tan face, and pale blue eyes. It's the country built on slavery. But it's also the country made of 100 other countries, with ethnic communities dotting our cities like stars in the night sky. When people think of America, they think of prosperity. When people think of America, they think of apple pie, McDonald's, and freedom. They don't think of discrimination. And they shouldn't. Because that's not what should define America, or what makes one American. It should be something wholly and utterly rejected. But in reality, this is hard to achieve. Part of the problem is that it's swept under the rug. Instead of acknowledging that the prejudice is there and it's prevalent, we disregard it and ignore it. Because we don't want to make a scene. We don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. Because if it doesn't affect us directly, then it doesn't matter. Some of us, the ones born with silver spoons in their mouths, the ones who never had anything handed to them, they have never had to leave everything they have ever known, and they have no right to say what makes one American. Because they whose ancestors have traveled the same path that they are trying to block today, they who try to justify their prejudice with half-truths and lies, they are immigrants too. So instead of looking at someone who has a round face, small eyes, and black hair, and telling them, you're not really American, take a step back and ask yourself, what makes me American?
That was awesome, wasn't it? Can we give one more round of applause for all of them? Thank you. Well, luckily, we have time for them to share again. So I'm going to call Sarah back up here because I know she has another piece. And then anyone else who wants to, you can as well. Okay, so I'm welcoming Sarah back up to the stage.
Okay, so this is a poem I wrote called Tumblr Girl, and it's about romanticizing mental illness, but also like my own journey with it, I guess. Okay. She is a dying firefly of a girl, and I want to be the last boy she ever kisses kind of a girl, a live fast, die young poster child of sorts. If she dies beautiful, then some poet somewhere will ink her into pretty, perfect metaphors. You'll see her when you're scrolling through your Tumblr feed, eyes flat and pale blue, a little too big for the face, mascara smudged movie perfect. She's got barcodes for arms, barcodes for hips. She can cry in black and white, like the last whisper on the radio before it fizzles out and goes dark. And all the girls just want to be her, and all the boys want to be the one to save her, because sad girls are pretty girls, sad girls are sad girls, are sick girls, are everyday dying girls, are girls who are running on empty. And I've seen her when she goes home, pulls on the same pair of sweatpants she's worn for a week and watches as the chalk ceiling goes inky. She's red-eyed and screaming like being angry isn't just another way to say she is afraid, that she has chased away every good thing she has ever had, and that all she has to show for her living is a string of broken promises, unfinished projects, a pile of dirty dishes in the sink. There are only so many times you can ask people to just understand. I do not want to be her. I want to be her when she is laughing with her head thrown back and doesn't need the green pills that are supposed to melt the blue. I want to be her when she gets better and still has bad days but doesn't forget to close her eyes to feel the way the sun kisses her skin. I want to be her when she finishes school and moves to the city and paints on the weekends. I want to be her when she grows old. I want to grow old.
Okay. Well, we have about like 7 or 8 minutes to ask questions from the crowd. So if you have any really good questions, go ahead and you can ask them now. Otherwise, you're going to have to listen to some terrible dad jokes from me. Let's see. Right there in the middle. So the question is, what is the reason you decided to share what you shared with us? And I'll just pass it along.
Just kind of to like inspire and like let your story, like from my story, like accept your story and just be who you are, and like just to kind of inspire everyone.
The reason I shared mine was because I worked really hard on it and I kept editing it like over and over and over again, and I was just really happy with how it turned out.
The reason I shared mine was because they were clean, and I don't know, I guess the same thing, like I worked on them.
I wrote my essay for my Common Up essay for colleges, and I was really proud of it because it took me like 5 rewrites to actually get the idea that I had down. And I just remember needing to put something in for Writers Week, and I was like, if this can help at least one person, why not? So yeah.
So mine was a Common App essay as well, but for me, it was also about kind of putting into words like this relationship I had with my culture, which I'd kind of always known but never been able to articulate. So I think this kind of helped me feel more concrete about the way I felt.
I could have spoken about any like issue with our country, but I decided to focus on immigration because it's the one I can mostly relate to. And I feel like it's important to like bring these issues up so we can start talking about them and hopefully like start doing something to fix them.
So I wrote mine as a shareable draft last year, and at that time I was like really pissed off with my family, so I kind of just like channeled that, and then when I shared it with my group, they all ended up liking it, and I thought there was like a message to share.
I also wrote mine as a shareable draft for last year, and I'm not gonna lie, I wrote it at like 3 a.m. the day before it was due. So it's kind of like the purest form of material for me. I just thought I'd use it for Writers Week.
Other questions from the crowd? Don't be shy. Yep, right over there. Jess, where'd you get your inspiration from?
I don't know. I just kind of think of things. So, yeah, that's all.
It's good to think of things. Good, thank you. Good question. Okay. Right there in the middle.
Question from my man Jason. Was the last part in there about still loving your family in there when you put the shareable draft, or was that added post?
Okay, so was that added later on?
So I kind of knew that I couldn't just cook my family for 3 paragraphs and not end it well. So it was just like kind of like putting the butter on top. So I put it in there.
Is anyone from your family here today? Is anyone from your family here today? Oh, okay. They'll see it though. Other questions? Right there? Is that Danny? Okay. Excellent question. As a writer, do you look up to or relate to an author of some sort? Maybe like a performer? It might be a writer's week, maybe something you've read in previous classes. Go ahead.
I don't really read like books. I don't really know, but I guess like inspired by like books and like in our English class we're reading this one book with Cap, and it like says more about like just like the way like kids like go through life and things they've been through, so I guess that's kind of inspiring. I don't really know the name of it, but
I don't have a specific like author or anything I look up to, but I definitely look up to all the people that do Writers Week because I have huge stage fright, so
An author I really look up to is Rudy Francisco. He's a spoken word poet. You can find his stuff on YouTube, but I just like how like raw and like real he is. And then I also like some of Ernest Hemingway's poems, just like how like concise they are. Like they say like almost nothing, but like everything at the same time.
This may be shocking, but Stephen King, yeah, would die for that man. I don't think I have a particular author who is my favorite, but I think any author that can inspire me or offer ideas and help me see the world in a way I haven't been able to see before, I think those are the kinds of authors I would look up to, yeah.
I love reading works by Sandra Cisneros because she's a person that has like a similar culture to me, so it's easier for me to relate to her and her life.
I don't really read that much, so but I got my inspiration from a writer from Writers Week last year. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but she was this Asian American woman who went to MIT for dentistry school, and then she just had a lot of conflicts with her parents. So
I also love Stephen King.
I have one for everybody. Okay, so as a member of the Writers Week community and now performers, is there a particular performer that you were looking forward to seeing this week? So like maybe somebody you've seen in the past who has inspired you, or maybe a fellow student like Valeria, somebody said you last period. Yeah, see? Isn't that great? So go ahead and share real quick.
To be honest, I haven't read the sheet, so.
There's a guy named Sen Morimoto. I think he's going Wednesday, and he's like with the record label 88 Rising, and he produced a lot of music, and I thought it was really cool. So.
Mr. Dawson told us about this woman called Sierra, and I forgot her last name, but I'm really excited because he said that she's a really good like performer of poetry.
So I'm pretty unfamiliar with the presenters this week, but I do have a friend who's presenting later this week, Brooke Toriani, and I love her, and I know she's going to do great, so I'm looking forward to that. I will second Brooke. I would say Sierra DeMulder, but I am not able to attend either of her periods, so I'm going to go with Fanboys, because support Fanboys rocks.
I'm excited to see Sierra DeMulder.
I haven't looked at the sheet much, but I'm just excited to see all of the students.
Yeah, same. I haven't really looked at it, but just like being able to see people in my own like school reading, it's kind of inspiring.
Thank you. And once again, let's thank our wonderful performers. And thank